This is Carrie and Summer with the Say My Name podcast that gives a voice to women's stories. It's my story, it's your story, it's our stories of pain and healing.
Betrayal doesn't begin to describe the knife that I pull out of my side. So I'ma put the past behind me, 'cause I got strength inside me, and a strength that I wanna share with you.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Summer and Carrie Show, the Say My Name podcast, part of the Say My Name project. And today we have Jeanine Coleman. She is going to talk about her experience with having a child who has an addiction, some of the adventures, some of the highs and the lows that they've had, and how she's been able to deal with that as a parent. Okay. So welcome, Jeannie.
Hello,
Thank you so
welcome.
much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Kind of start with the story. How did all this get started? When did you find out that your daughter Brianna was taking drugs? What kind of drugs?
When she was about 16, I really honed in and figured out something weird was going on. I didn't, prior to that, I didn't really think that anything was going on. I just thought she was moody, moody teenager. We had her hospitalized in a mental facility because of threatening suicide and cutting.
How old was she then? When
she was probably 14 at the time. She had started high school and it just got really weird. Just noticed things that were weird. And prior to that, she was a gymnast and had been a gymnast since she was 4 years old. And she had this, I don't remember the technical term of it, but it's where you pull your hair out. So she pulled her eyelashes out. So we had her, seeing a psychologist for that. So I knew after that it was cured. The lady did these buzz therapy. I'm not sure what the technical term is with that either. But she was cured for that. I did find out some disturbing things that she had divulged to the counselor at the time about some of the gymnastic stuff. And we eventually, after the incident where she went into the mental facility to be evaluated, we got her out of gymnastics, or it might have been prior to that. We just knew it was a little bit too rough for her, and she was having issues with grades and, the typical teenager stuff. We had gotten the eyelash thing cured. I knew it could have been gone into something else, which was the cutting, self-harm, anything to ease whatever the anxiety or depression that kids do. So after that, she was having high school. That was traumatic, and she had some issues with girls. She never really bonded too much with girls. They were always really either just negative or I don't know if it was on her part or what, but she did have a couple close girlfriends, and but then others were really picking on her a lot of times. So we ended up getting her out of high school. She got her GED during her sophomore year, and then she went to cosmetology school. And during that time is when I started noticing different things. She had a boyfriend at the time. I noticed money missing, which it was hard for me because I deal with cash a lot, and I was not very good about it. I just stick it in my wallet, go home, So I did notice some things like that. And then at the time, I was taking antidepressants or something like that. I don't remember exactly. It was probably maybe not depressants, but anxiety medicines. So I noticed things like that missing. I did catch her one time going in my purse and taking them out, and I was like, "What are you doing?" So
taking the pills out?
Taking the pills out of the bottle that I had in my purse. This boyfriend at the time, they would hang out all the time together, and she did drive at the time. And I remember going through her car, and I found a piece of tinfoil with black marks on it. And I was like, "What's this?" And she told me that the boyfriend's mother was giving them incense. It was an incense, and she was burning the incense on tinfoil. And stupid me, I didn't know what that was.
Right.
I was like,
I wouldn't know what that is. So what is that?
It's freebasing, where you put a pill or you can smoke heroin off of it. But I do believe at this time it was only pills. They would do oxys and, not just take them internally, but they would light them and have a straw or a cap of they break a pen in half and take that and smoke it. I had no clue what that was. So in about a year into this whole thing, I had a friend that was staying with us on and off, and he had found these little baggies, and I was like, they're little bags, plastic bags, little tiny bags, and they have characters on them. Some of them do. They're different types of things. And he was like, and he knew what those things were, and he said, hey, I found these. And I'm like, oh, you just don't think.
Right.
You're just like, and at this time I was living with my ex-husband, and he was not really any help. He just shook his head and always looked a different direction. There's really no talking to him about it. And then about a year after that, she was about finishing cosmetology school, I believe, and I ended up leaving my ex-husband. That whole relationship was not a relationship anyways at that point in time. We didn't sleep in the same rooms or anything like that. So I'm sure that was hard on the kids too, but I think a lot of it had to do with everything, the dynamics of going on, that I didn't feel like I had a partner at the time either. So I couldn't really try and discuss with him about what was going on. She finished cosmetology school, and she ended up moving to Anthem with me, and she had a different boyfriend at this time. Now, before I left my ex-husband, I had stashed cash. One night I came home, and I found the drawer open that I had the cash in. And we used to lock our door with a key thing, and they got in somehow. And I do believe either her or her boyfriend at the time took about $700 worth of cash.
Wow.
So I was devastated because that was my moving out money, and it was scary. She ended up staying with her dad in the house. I think he started catching on to some things going on, and he ended up kicking her out. So she ended up moving up with us for a little bit. So this fast forward to 18th birthday. She had a boyfriend at the time that thought something was going on. And we knew things were going on. I mean, I kept quiet because every time you try to talk to her or say something, you're shut down. There, I'm not doing anything, or you get the attitude, typical, which when she was in that one mood, that mental hospital, she was only there for like a couple days, but they did diagnose her with a mood disorder, and she's, I'm sure bipolar, who knows. At the time, when you're trying to help diagnose your child and get them help, you try to find child psychologists or child psychiatric doctors. They are not out there. You cannot find them. Every time we try to call one, they're not available. They're gone. Their office is shut down. We had so many different ones on our insurance, and none of them were available. And we just could not get her the right meds to help her. So in all actuality, I do believe that is what led to her addiction issues. Yeah.
She was self-medicating.
Self-medicating, for sure. And it just gets worse after that. You start with the pills, and then I'm sure they went to heroin after. When she was about 18, she was, I'm sure, doing heroin and only freebasing. She was not shooting up at the time. This boyfriend she'd gone somewhere. I don't remember where she was for the day, but he was at our house. So he started looking in our house and for things. He found a cell phone. He found drugs, which really upset me where they were. I'm not going to divulge where they were because we do have other children in the house. And that's scary for me too, being a blended family at this time, and we've got other children in the house. So I had this major pressure on me because I have this child that's doing these crazy things, and I have these other kids in my house, and I have to, I don't ever want anything to happen to other kids or my stepkids on my watch. That's been one of my big things. And I feel like I'm pretty trained because my daughters run me through the ringer. So I'm pretty smart at certain things now, but then I was not. We got on these phones when he'd found the phones, and we noticed that they weren't service phones. You could only text, and there was text apps on there that you could do. And I was blown away that the technology for these kids to find out what they could do without having anything to track them. So we went on there, and this night, I can remember specifically, we had gotten on there and just had a big fight with the boy that she started dating when she first started doing drugs, and two other individuals. A boy and a girl, and they'd been dating for a long time, and they threatened my husband. They threatened that they were going to kill him because we were telling them to stop talking to her. We didn't want her doing drugs anymore. We really were doing the parent thing, like I never had this with my ex-husband before, and I had a man there that was actually sticking up for me.
So this is your husband now?
Yeah, my husband now. it was a terrible night. And I remember for her 18th birthday, we had to call the sheriffs and we had them fake arrest her because we did find heroin in the house. And we talked to the sheriff and we said, look, can you just scare her? He's like, oh yeah, I will. And so she took off. He went to go find her, couldn't find her. And she comes walking in the door and she said some mean comment about the cop saying, well, he didn't even see me and he's a stupid ass or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. So my husband called the police officer and said, she just came in the door. So he comes back and he told the police officer exactly what she said. And he goes, oh, really? This is going down. And I knew he wasn't going to arrest her. And I was thankful for that. But I wanted the shit scared out of her because I thought as a parent, you're like, you try to grasp at anything that you possibly can do to make them stop.
Yeah. Is that hard?
Yeah. So he comes to the door and he knocks on it and he says, and I said, Brianna, I go, you better go answer the door. So she did. He goes, are you Brianna Zagerman? And she goes, yes. And he goes, come outside and turn around and put your hands behind your back. And he handcuffed her right there. And he talked to her for a bit and she would not break. She would not break. She sat there stone cold faced and didn't even cry, didn't do anything. Until he put her in the back of the police car and then told her that you're going to be somebody's bitch and they're going to break you in half. And if you don't get your shit together, you're going to die. And then she started to cry. So he said, I just want you to know that I'm not taking you in tonight, but I will keep this heroin for 7 years. And if I ever come to here again, I'm arresting you and there's no going back. And so I sent a picture to her dad and he said to me, don't ruin her life. I'm ruining her life.
Right.
I'm trying to save her life. We finally got him. I made my husband call him and talk to him because we didn't have a relationship to talk. We didn't talk to each other about much. I had my husband call him. Thank you. And I said, we need to discuss. I have a client that's in the addiction and recovery industry. And so I called her and talked to her. She had helped me with my daughter in the mental health Banner. That's where she went, was Banner, back when she was like 14. So I said, what do I do? Where do I put her? Who do I talk to? So we put in place a plan, had her dad come over and we talked and said, we're not going to let you stay with either one of us anymore. You need to make a decision if you're going to go to rehab. So she was pretty pissed off and didn't want to talk to her dad anymore, but she did go and we got her set up and we put her in Prescott. A lot of it is blocked. I just block it.
A big blur.
Yeah, it's a blur. It's a big blur because there's been so many other things that have happened since.
It's actually really typical to go through a traumatic time in your life and then block some of that out.
Yeah. And my husband and I drove her down there and we dropped her off. It was really hard, but I knew she was safe. And that was like the best feeling in the world, that I was actually going to sleep or I wasn't going to worry or wonder if she was doing something or having somebody come to the house or all these things that run in your head that you start to, as a mom, you go to those places and you're like, oh, I never even thought of that, or I never even knew that, or, I was happy she was safe. And we went a lot to go see her. We went every weekend that we possibly could go see her. There's a process that it goes through. I think it's a detox process. You can't talk to them for a little while and then you can. And then if everybody behaves themselves in the place, then you can have visiting. It's really strict. It was the first of many. Okay, so she got kicked out of that one. And it was kind of funny because you're just so freaking naive as a parent. And I mean, I'm so open to a lot of things and I don't really, not a lot of shit shocks me. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was because I was a police officer's daughter growing up. I don't know. They kicked her out because they won't tell me things because here she's 18 and she had to go and get herself in. It wasn't me putting her in and I wasn't telling, so they can't tell me things unless she tells them they can tell me. So this lady told me that she was having a relationship with someone. And I was like, she's talking to the boys over the wall or something, And I'm like,
So we go to the mall, or we go to Walmart to go shopping and get some things, because she had a time to get out and go out to do stuff. And when we'd go see her, we'd bring her out and take her to eat and whatever. And I said, could you be pregnant? I said, should we, do you need anything? I'm like, I was like, do you need tampons? Could you be pregnant? That's when I found out she had a relationship with a girl. Right. And I was like, oh, whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, why can't you fucking tell me? I'm like, you think I'm going to go crazy or something? I mean,
at least you're not pregnant.
I know. I'm like, exactly. At least you're not pregnant. So now the relationship in my house now is very open and laughy, and we are very sarcastic, and it was just so funny and just fun. And so every time we would take her out after that, my son would start getting in on it, and he's 4.5 years younger than she is. So for him to get in on it was pretty funny. And he's like, so who wears the pants? Who's this? Who's that? And it's like, and he's just asking questions, and they're very close, and he's very hurt by her decisions many times, and he gets very frustrated with her. So it was good to see them laughing and having fun and not caring and not being judgmental. And it's life, and it's different than when my parents were growing up. It's different when I was growing up, and it's different when they're growing up, and just the dynamics of the universe. And so that was one place. So sober living after that. Had really good girlfriends, had a really good friend named Shelby. She was somebody that was really, I think, good for her, tried to be good for her. She had gotten kicked out of sober living because she used, and she had to go back into treatment again. So I think their relationship was done after that, and we really, really, really like Shelby. Shelby's doing good, and she's been doing good as far as I know. I watch her on stuff sometimes just to make sure she's okay, because she's somebody that I grew close to as a mom. So she went back in again. We went up there a ton to see her and do the whole parent thing, or the family thing, and the counselings and all this stuff. And it's just like, I want to say, I think she met this guy somewhere. I don't know where. Don't remember how she met him. I think I blocked it out. Had me and my husband come up and meet him. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever, And I was just like, and I'm always just, I probably have the weirdest looks on my face when I'm sitting there. Like scoping it out. What are you doing? Without asking the questions. I'm like just processing it. So next thing you know, they're dating. I just try and check them up on, check up on them Facebook and see what's going on, and just do my little mom work and my investigations. Next thing you know, she comes back down to Anthem, and she says, so guess what? And I go, what'd you do? Go get married? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. I was like, well, congratulations. That's all I could think to say. I was like, whatever, So he was working at they all start working at recovery places, like homes, or they become, counselors or of some sort or another. They work the circuit. I always just sit there and go, well, you're just making new friends. You're making new friends. In every state you go to, you're making new friends to learn how to do whatever. So that's when I learned that she was starting to shoot up. I was in major denial. I don't remember if there was any rehabs in between that after she got married.
And how old was she when she got married?
I want to say she was probably like 19, right there, like straight up 19, 19 and a half, something like that.
A little girl.
Yeah. I block it. I just can't, it's just like kind of like I could be missing a rehab here, because there's so many more. Thought they were doing good. My daughter's on the thin side anyway, so it's always really hard to gauge if she's using or just not eating. I don't know. So they ended up making a company. Her husband at the time, I don't want to say his name, he started a men's rehab facility, like after facility, a home, something like that. It was after his brother, because his brother died. His family's a lot of addiction, and I believe his mother's got some issues because she was a major enabler. So they had a couple houses. They had men living in these homes in Prescott. She was still in Prescott. During those times, I'm not sure if it was after she got out the second time or the third time that she started shooting up. I remember having a conversation with her after she got out of a facility, and she had another boyfriend relationship after that one, after that second one, I believe. I get so confused. And I told her, I said, you're going to be meeting people. You need to be very careful that, you're not going to get hepatitis, or you're going to get some kind of AIDS,
Right.
from shooting up using needles. I mean, I don't know much about this, so I'm just grasping at straws and trying to figure out, okay, you could get bad stuff if you guys are sharing needles. So that wasn't what she got, but it was sexually transmitted disease that will never go away. And it's just, when you hear that from your kid, and you're just devastated because you tried to talk to them and tell them to be careful. And so, I mean, if she's not mad about it, I'm not mad about it, because she's obviously living, and she's going to have to deal with it, not me. So that's when I started getting the whole, I can't do everything. I can't be this mom anymore that's going to try, and if you're not going to listen to me. So you start to block stuff. They just start going rogue. I took her to a beauty show with me. I was super excited. We were going to Vegas, and we were going to, drive out there for the day and go to this beauty show. And she was super sick. And I was just like, I couldn't understand what was going on. And here I'd been living this with her, but not really living this with her. She was super sick, like sweats and this. And she was like really sick and couldn't walk. And it kind of screwed up the whole day. And she had to lay down the whole entire time on the way home. And I even had to stop on the side of the road for her to pee. And I was like, are you pregnant? And I called her husband and I said, I think she's really sick. I think you need to take her to the doctor. And he just kind of didn't really, he's like, okay, I'll take her. I'm like, all right. That's when I found out, like, she was doing it again. Or it was this point where she was shooting up. So.
And she was detoxing during that trip?
I don't know if she could have possibly been detoxing. I think a lot of times what they would do is go hardcore and then stop and then detox. But you can totally die from detoxing. And I don't know if she didn't want to do it while she was with me, and that was the problem. And because I spent the night at their house that night before, and I'm just oblivious. I get so mad at myself when I think about times when I was around there and I was like, didn't know anything.
So he had a rehab facility and was shooting up.
I'm sure. Yeah. I think they both were. And then it all went downhill. And then they ended up taking off to Redding, California, where his parents live. And they lived there for a little bit. And I don't know, because I don't know the stories of much. She doesn't really divulge too much about what went on there. But I think they kicked him out. So they went to like Huntington and Newport, and they started living on the streets. They lived in their cars. And this is the first time I ever realized that there was like, because I would say stuff to her, I'd be like, so where do you get needles? She's like, the needle exchange. Where do you get Narcan? The needle exchange. I'm like, okay. And as many times as my daughter had to Narcan her husband, I can't even believe he's still alive.
What's that?
Narcan is a drug that chases the drug out of your system so you don't die.
So if you overdose.
And you have it, which they do give it at needle exchanges because there's so much overdose. She's not told me if she's ever had to be Narcaned. They never got into that conversation. So she was out there. She had her car. Now she had a car from the time she was 16. And he had a van. So she slept in her car. He slept in his van. I don't know the details. I just know they stayed on the beach in wherever, and they moved their cars constantly so that they wouldn't get tickets. So they started working for like DoorDash and whatever else that was. And that's basically how my kid would eat, because she would take people's food and then she would deliver. So didn't have any money, would sit on corners and ask for money. And
wow.
So I think she ended up going to another rehab while she was out there. I think she did. Because we thought she was doing good, and I thought he was doing good. We went out there, my son and I went out there and took them to Universal Studios, and I knew something was up with him. He just kept going into the bathroom, and he was being an asshole. And he wasn't even in a rehab. He was just visiting his parents. He was coming down from visiting with his parents to go see her for the weekend. And I can't even remember the names of these places because there were so many of them. He just kept going to the bathroom, and then he came out and said something. He goes, there's like a needle drop box in there, like for like people that have insulin, they have to take insulin or something. I think they're in bathrooms now. So he was like thinking it was for like drug people. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, he was being an ass that day. So after we left, she sent me a text the next day because my son and I were driving back early in the morning, and she goes, "Are you still here?" And I said, "No, we left already." And it was basically like one of those things where you kind of felt like, should I go back? Because I felt like she was wanting me to come get her. But I didn't.
Was she in rehab at that time?
She was going to a place, and she had left. She didn't tell me she had
I see.
left. She was out on this, or she was able to do this, but she had left. And you can leave. They don't need to keep you. And they take your insurance money, and they're happy to take it. I think he got put in jail for something, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he was in there for a while. One other place she went, she met this guy, and I didn't know this for a while, but she had driven all the way to Indiana and back by herself.
Wow.
Because she left the guy there. He was from Indiana. She latches on to people really quick, and I think she thought that they were going to have something, but they ended up doing drugs a ton, and he was very big. He was a very big guy. I was like, holy crap, he lifts. He was humongous. And I never understood how these men that were so buff and everything were like so heroined out. And unfortunately, since the last 6 months, about 6 months ago, this guy passed away. He died of an overdose.
Wow.
So it's sad, but you just, some people just can't, you can't fight it. She drove all the way back, and I'm sure she was high a lot of the time. She tells me bits of stories of which she has gone through, places she's gone to get drugs. And I'm just, she's a tiny person, and she's blonde, and she is pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's beautiful.
I just can't imagine things that she did, but she's pretty badass too. So I think she gets that from me. But,
Absolutely.
Of course.
so
So did she ever tell you that she traded sex for drugs?
No, never did that I know of, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be shocked. So, I mean, if she were to tell me someday that she did, I'd be like, well, at that point, you probably needed to do what you needed to do, because I do know now coming off of stuff is way worse than being on it. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. I got her home finally after this, and she was living with her dad, and she was supposed to be doing really good. And she went to Chandler. I took her to Casa Grande. I drove her all the way out to Casa Grande. And the day that we had met, she was in her old car. We met because she was with her dad, and we met at Sauce at Norterra, and she looked like shit. And I knew she looked like shit, but her mom, and I wanted to sit with her and eat, and she didn't, and we're going to discuss the game plan on trying to get her into a place. And I had talked to my client again and tried to get some information on a place, so she told me a place to go. And we talked to the person. She had called them for me and said, this person's going to be calling. And so I did, and we discussed a game plan, and she wasn't coming to the restaurant fast enough. And I was like, oh God, what is she doing? So I know she sat in the car in the parking lot and shot up before she came and saw me. Mm-hmm. So we were sitting there, and I guess it was a day off from kids' school out in the neighborhood down there, and there was teenage girls and stuff, and they were just staring at my kid because she looked like shit. And I just wanted to scream at those girls and tell them, what the fuck were you looking at? I was pissed, because you could be like this too. You could just take one thing one time and not even have any issues, and you could just take that one thing at a party one night, and you just come out like this. And at the time, she had tried to do this stupid dreadlock shit in her hair, and her hair was all matted in the back, and I'm sure it was because she couldn't take showers, and she looked like shit. She did. And on that, I can't.
Breaks your heart.
Yeah, it does. And I told her, let's go and do this. And so I got her to I let her drive, and I followed her, and I was having a nervous breakdown. We had to go all the way to Scottsdale to go to this place, and we got her in, and I paid the money to get her in there to get an eval, and then I left because I had to go back to work, and she comes back there, and she's basically barely even walking. I mean, I don't know, she must have gotten the last part of, I don't know, it was terrible. And they said they could get her in this place in Casa Grande, so I was like, okay, I'm driving you to Casa Grande. So then I think it was the next day or something, and I drove her to Casa Grande. She came down to my work. I drove her there, went home, Wasn't allowed to talk to her. You're never allowed to talk to him for like a week afterwards. But I think they let her call me to let me know everything was okay. She got out of that one. They got back together because he was up there now in a rehab again. Her dad had bought her a car because she'd gotten into an accident. And it wasn't her fault, which I don't know, but this guy turned left in front of her. And so her car was totaled. Then her dad went and bought her a new car. So, because he thought she was doing good. So then we went to the hospital and she had to get back. They put her on Oxy and I'm sitting there and her dad's sitting there. My husband's sitting there. And I go, you can't give her Oxy. And she goes, no, it's okay. I told her I'm okay with it. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I look at, and she's living with her dad and he's like, and I go, are you going to be okay giving this to her? And he's like, yeah, I'll be fine. Can't do anything about it because she'd broke her elbow. And I was like, whatever. I'm not going to sit here and fight with this man he's oblivious. And he's never even once. He just does his caring from afar. And he's an enabler big time. She got back together with her husband. And then finally she just said, I need to come and get some of my stuff because they had left some stuff at my house. I'm going to go to Florida. And I said, yeah, right. I said, I don't believe you. Well, she had a friend at the time that would help people get into rehabs and he would get a kickback from it. And then he would split with people the money. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the stuff these people do. So he ends up driving after she gets on the plane, goes to Florida for rehab there. He ends up driving it to California and he got a ticket and got put back in jail and the car got impounded. So they called my ex-husband. He had to go get the car. She never saw the car again, which is fine with me. Thank God for once. I sent him this long text message that said, you need to stop enabling her and you need to take the car away. She came home from Florida. We got her home. They were basically letting her go. And I was very close. I'm very close with the woman that at the time that was running this place there. Her husband had lost his son, I believe, to an addiction and overdose. So they were good people, really good people. And so we had good conversations, but it just happened so fast. I had to bring her home. I was paying for her flight to come home. I had to buy her luggage. I had to, do all this stuff to get her back home. And my husband and I at the time were going to be in California. So I had to make arrangements for my son to go pick her up at the airport because I knew my mom wouldn't be able to go get her, but she had to stay with my mom. That made me nervous. So my mom told me the whole time after they picked her up that she was in the bedroom all the time and she wouldn't come out and she wasn't eating and she was throwing up. And I was like, oh God. And I said to my daughter, I'm like, what are you doing? I'm not doing anything. I'm like, okay, I have to believe her because she's not going to tell me the truth anyways. We get home and we have a big, long discussion, my husband and I let my husband lead the discussion because I was just tired. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And he said, I do not want to see my TV walking out of this house. I don't want to see anything being stolen. I don't want to have people coming to my house. I don't want drugs coming in here. And if this happens, he goes, you're going to be out of here. He goes, we will give you everything that you need to get yourself back on, but you have to prove to us that you're going to be okay. And my son wasn't on the conversation too because he's very, he loves her to death. It's hard for him to understand why I still love her. I gave birth to her. You won't understand until you have children. It's very hard living in a house with somebody that stays in their bedroom all the time. She had no car. These are things that I remember her as a child trying to make me feel guilty to give in. Well, I'm not going to do this. And then you want to just make your kid happy and you're thinking that's going to make them happy and they're going to smile and everything's going to be okay. Well, I wasn't giving in. So she basically stayed in her room and she would clean and do things, watch television. She never really tried to get a job, but she always told us, we always wanted her to work a program, but she never wanted to work a program because she said she didn't have a car. And I was like, well, I know what you do with cars. You go find people that you want to hang out with and do things. And so September comes around. That's only a few months. I keep thinking it was like a lifetime. Mm-hmm. Everything was good. I mean, we were, I'd talk to her, go in and see her every night when I get home from work. I'd call her, make sure everything was right. I would look at my camera all day to see what was going on. I would check activity, things like that. The boys were in and out of the house all the time, my husband and my son. We were out to dinner that night on September 21st, and we were just at a local restaurant, and my daughter texted me and said, can you get me some stuff for my lips? She had a cold sore. And I said, yeah, we'll stop at the store and, and we go to Walmart and, it's a typical night. We go to the restaurant, then we go to Walmart, and then my husband sees somebody he knows, and then we talk. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, so we went home. I don't know. I was just messing around downstairs, and I go in, and the TV is so dang loud, and I'm like, what is going on? And my dog wasn't down there, and Gracie, and I'm screaming for my dog, and she comes running down, and I swear, if she could have told me something, she would have said something to me. I was like, oh, she must be upset with Brianna. And I started walking up the stairs after I put the dog outside. Then I forgot something, so I went back down, and I was talking to David about some book I saw. And then I went upstairs, and the way my stairs are is you walk up the stairs, and my bedroom's to the left, and there's 2 other bedrooms to the right, and my husband's office is up there. But you can't see, so I just went in my room, plugged in my phone, grabbed her stuff for her lip, and I went to go over to her side of the room where she was at, where her bedroom and the bathroom were. And I look over, and I'm like, and I just like, I look at her on the floor, and she looks like she's got period cramps. She's in fetal position, like over on the floor. And I'm like, hey, I go, what's wrong? I go, do you have period cramps? And I can't move her. She's stiff. What the fuck is going on? And I finally get her turned, and I see her glasses on her face are like crushed into her face. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like sitting there, and I mean, this seems like it's like taking like 5 hours just to process what the hell's going on. And all I could see was her foot, and her foot was like a greenish, disgusting looking color. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I couldn't move her. I finally got her undone from that, and I got her on her back. I couldn't get her undone. And then I think I went to the area where you can scream downstairs, and I started yelling to my husband to call 911. And I was screaming at him and just screaming his name over and over again. And I was like, call 911. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And I went back into the bathroom, and I think I may have tried to do CPR on her first, but I couldn't get her mouth open because it was clenched shut. And I was like, she's dead. I'm thinking she's dead. She's dead. I can't get air into her. I don't know what to do. It was just clenched. And I'm thinking to myself, has she got rigor mortis? Is this rigor mortis? Is it setting in? I'm like, that's the first thing I started to think about. Right. I was like, finally, I used to do this funny thing to the kids when they were little, and they'd just be watching television, laying on their back, and I'd come up to them, and I'd stick my mouth on their nose, and I'd blow in, and then they'd go like that, and they just hated it. They were like, don't do that to me. And I was like, oh my God, I think this is the only way I can get air into her. So I started like rubbing my knuckles into her chest, like hard. And then I put my mouth over her nose because I couldn't even do compressions on her. I mean, it was like hard. I'm like, okay, wow. I'm going to do what I can do. And so I blew into her nose, and her chest went up. And I was like, what? I was like, okay. And our house upstairs was completely dark. I see him on the phone. So he's calling. And I think after 4 times of blowing in her nose and just digging my knuckles into her chest, she woke up, came around. And I was like, this is just a freaking miracle. And then by then she sat up, and I'm like, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And I'm like, what'd you take? And she's like, I think she said nothing, which was typical. I don't know what you did. I don't, first of all, I went straight to thinking she was shooting up. So I looked for that kind of stuff. I didn't see anything. I don't remember being there, but I was there. And so the paramedics came upstairs, and they got her on this chair, and they started, talking to her and telling her, do you need Narcan? She's like, no. They wanted to give her an IV, but her, it was hard because she even admitted that her veins are pretty bad from shooting up for so long. This paramedic or firefighter or something went in the bathroom, and he immediately found the tinfoil and the straw. And I was like, ay. So I was like, what'd you take? And she said she took a Xanax. So immediately we started putting 2 and 2 together. We got on her phone. We called the guy. We asked him what he took, what he gave her. He was denying it. My husband, again, was telling the guy that you better hope that she lives, because if she doesn't, we're coming after you. We already have the cops here. We've told them your number. We've told them this. We really were like straight up telling this guy that we're going to get you. He was adamant that he didn't. And my husband was like, I just want you to know that we have cops in our neighborhood. We've had some people call us to say that there was a suspicious vehicle in the neighborhood. We have camera of your license plate. You are going down, which was kind of true, but we didn't know the facts yet until after some of our neighbors came back from vacation, that we did have the vehicle. And in fact, one of our neighbors is a SWAT guy, and he saw the vehicle and he had to leave because there was a big issue that he had to go to, and he was in a hurry, and he saw it, and he saw them turn left, which out of our neighborhood is the New Circle Mountain development, and it wasn't even developed then, and he saw this car turn that way, so he knew something was up, but it just didn't work out that way, which is okay, thank God. But we took her to the hospital that night, the same stuff, I said, what are we going to do, and you try to tell your kid without telling them how badly they scared you, because you just don't know if they care. And I mean, is it going to go on deaf ears? And I think she deep down cares that I went through such a traumatic thing.
Because you saved her life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I gave her life again. So, I just, you don't really think it clicks with them because they're really just deep into this stuff, this drug. It got okay after that, but she was so moody again, and it was hard being there. It was hard living there. And then, a couple of days later, it was my birthday after this thing happened. And there's been times when I haven't had contact with her. I've done okay. And you don't want to say that, but you do want to say that, because you have to be okay. You have to understand that there's not much you could do for them, and they have to want it. And why torture yourself if it's not for you?
Yeah, and unfortunately, this lifestyle, this addiction that they have, is something that could take their life any second.
Yeah.
And that's something that when you're going through that as a parent, day after day, year after year, you kind of almost get a little bit calloused, I would think, just to kind of protect your heart.
I mean, there's lots of times where she would unfriend me on Facebook, and I wouldn't know what was going on, and I wouldn't know what was going on. And a lot of times when she was out on the streets in California, and I remember one time David and I went out there to go see her, and we were in California for a couple of days, and I said, hey, can you come see me? We'll take you to eat. And I saw her, and I was so happy to see her, but she's literally sitting on the stool, and she's like falling over, and I'm like, what the hell are you on right now? And she's like, I'm Xanax. I'm like, okay, where'd you get that from? And she would tell me the mother-in-law would give it to him. And I think she was a major enabler. She goes, I'm trying to detox off of stuff. And I'm like, well, I can't keep up with when you're detoxing, when you're not detoxing, what you're doing, is this drugs? Or is it just what you're doing to try and get yourself to be better? You just never know. I was happy to see her that night. I was really thankful. And for that day, it was good for me. But didn't know when I was going to see her again, or if I was going to see her again, because you just never knew if you were going to get a call. And especially when you don't know where your kid is, it's scary.
Have you been involved in any of the support groups through Al-Anon or?
I've not done stuff. I like to read. I read books I've read a lot of books about addiction and parents and things like that. There is a Facebook group that's specific for Arizona. It's funny because one of my daughter's best friends growing up, they're no longer friends like that anymore, but it was funny because I don't know if I was on the site, and I started talking to her, and I go, oh my gosh, you're so-and-so's grandma, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. And I go, my daughter and your granddaughter were like best friends in grade school. So we've become close because she has children that are addicts, and I think she has a couple boys that are. After what happened last year, I've kind of went off the grid. I didn't really want to discuss only with a few people. She is in Prescott again. She lives with a boy, a man, whatever, whatever you call them, her boyfriend, and she is actually utilizing her cosmetology license, and she's cutting hair. After that whole thing that happened, so we had some hard times and everything, she ended up finally getting a job, and she started seeing this guy. One day I came home, she was crying, and I was like, what's going on? And she said that she told me that the guy that gave her the drugs had died of an overdose. Mm-hmm. That gave her the drugs that night had died of an overdose. And it was really, and I think those little things do hit you. And then all of a sudden you start seeing other people dying that you didn't expect were going to die. And I think she's lost a lot of people, a lot of acquaintances that she's known. The one thing I want to say about why this thing is happening now so much is this addiction stuff. And whatever divine thing happened that night that I didn't, thank God her mouth didn't open, because what is fueling this overdose stuff right now is fentanyl. And there's a lot of things that people are lacing these pills or whatever the heck they're smoking or whatever they have. Police officers have to wear gloves now because if they touch it, they can immediately get sick and die.
Wow.
And it's scary. And I think to myself, I'm like, well, maybe that's why I didn't,
get her mouth
maybe
open.
I couldn't get her mouth open. And maybe I wasn't supposed to touch her mouth. Maybe that's why, because I could have been in that same position right there. She left and ended up going up there with him, and I was fine with that. I was good. I needed the break. I mean, you get so freaking exhausted because you don't know if she's mad at you, or she's mad at this person, or she's this, and that's this whole mood disorder that goes back to her childhood. I went up there with her in her room, and she asked me to throw some things away, and I did, but I had to look at it and see, and I'm hoping it's from her past life, since she asked me to throw it away. And I do believe the boy that she's with now is sober, and I think that he's really helped her. She's gotten her own car. She actually got her driver's license back because her driver's license was suspended because she had a ticket in California, a ticket in Arizona, and had to pay fees. But he helped her get to that point where she paid it. She could drive, but she kept paying every month, and she's been good with her job. She's actually a key holder now and where she worked. But
that's wonderful.
Yeah. A lot of times when I'm on these groups that I see, it's very hurtful to see parents get so pissed at their kids. And I think that's, for me, really hard because, yeah, you get pissed, but you still have to love them because, you can't, it's not you. And that's one thing that you have to understand. It's not you but you have to just not enable. You have to be, there's so many things that you have to worry about. Is that, why are you giving them money? What are they going to use for it? I mean, there was a time when I actually had, when I did have money in my purse all the time because of the way where I work, I get paid cash a lot. I went to this guy and I said, I need a purse that locks. And he gave me a purse that locks, and I had a lock on it. And I had to keep the key in my pocket all the time. I tried to keep my doors locked. I'm not enabling. You cannot enable. You have to do everything in guarded, but still love them. Don't not love your kid. They're there. They're somewhere in there. And as many times as she's gotten sober, and I wish she could have been here, but I mean, we're very close, but she wants to use me and be mad at me, the first person. The moms are always the ones that the kids can use as kicking posts because they know you'll come back. Parents, in the groups that I'm in, the men are the ones that really just shake their heads and don't. It's hard I don't know if it's hard. I can't speak for a man, but I just know that they don't show their hurt like a parent, like a mother does. And for a mother, it's hard because you brought them into this world, I guess. I don't know the difference, but I've never stopped loving her. I internalize a lot of stuff. So for me, I would be like quiet. I would not sleep. There's lots of sleepless nights. I mean, especially after her incident that happened, I had like nights where I woke up and I couldn't breathe. I was like, oh. And then I actually saw a counselor after that. And she told me to make it seem like it was on a movie screen. I mean, there's things that we have to do as parents. We have to have our own counseling. We have to have our support group. We have to have groups. But a lot of people are angry. A lot of parents are angry. And I don't respond to that because, yeah, you're angry, but you cannot hate your child. I can't explain. And for the people that want to judge the addicts, that's very hurtful to me. And I always want to lash out at them, but I just can't because I just hope that they never have to deal with it because you don't know if your grandkid later in life is going to be that. You don't know. There's so many different seasons of life from 5 years ago. It's different.
So how do you stay balanced and sane? How do you stay centered so that you can be fulfilled in your own life and not internalize all of her pain and feel responsible and feel like you have to fix it?
I don't think I've ever put that pressure on myself. I do not think I have. I don't know if it's just because I'm a strong-willed person. I don't know. I I'm sure maybe people around me might have a different observation, especially my son and maybe my husband now. I have to be on in my job. My job is, I do nails and I have to talk to people all day long, and they hear my story, and I guess talking about it too, there's a lot of people who have walked this walk with me and have known her since she was 4.
You've always been open about talking about her drug addiction. I remember she lived in Florida when you started working with me. And I thought that was very brave of you to be so open about talking about it. A lot of people there's a lot of shame around that, especially as a parent, because you think, this is my fault. This is my child. I'm the one that's supposed to be responsible for their choices, and it's a reflection of my parenting. That's what a lot of parents think.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not true.
Just saw that shit on Facebook the other day.
Right. I want to honor you and let you know I think that is amazing that you are so open and vocal about it, because we need to. This is an issue.
It's hard because a lot of parents don't want to believe that at the time, because I don't think they're typically in denial at the beginning. They just don't know. I mean, who would have thought that my kid was smoking drugs or pills off of a tinfoil? I look at tinfoil totally different now, and I deal with it every day. I'm like,
right, with
my nails, and it's like, and I know drugs are in schools. People say that. It's one of the biggest things right now is there's so much drugs in the high school and this and that and the vaping. And I'm like, hey, if they're not going to smoke cigarettes, let them vape. Because I think it's a heck of a lot better than cigarettes. Don't judge. If the kid wants to do it, they're going to do it. I smoked when I was in high school. I smoked when I was in grade school. I smoked pot when I was a kid. That I tried it. I hated it. I'm an in-control person. There's no way I would have been a drug addict just because I don't like to feel weird. Of course, I tried it. Pot right now makes people feel good because they have pain, and it's something that's better, and it's done differently than what you buy on the streets. Then go for it if it makes you feel better. I'm so open to whatever. I don't believe it's a gateway drug to get people hooked on heroin. No way. It's a totally different thing. It's pain pills that's the problem in this day and age. Doctors prescribe them way too much.
They're so easy to get.
They prescribe meds all the time, way too much, or they don't know what they're doing when they do prescribe them, and I think that's a big issue. So many kids that I've known up here recently that have died from overdoses. I remember the day after Thanksgiving last year, I was at the outlet mall shopping with my husband, and I hear sirens coming from my neighborhood, and I was like, we need to go home right now, because I was thinking it was my kid. I thought my son, I looked at my phone, I was like, oh my gosh, did something happen? And we drive down where the ambulance and corner and every hazmat was there. I was like, what the heck's going on here? And we see this house, and we know the kid that lives there, we know the family that lives there, and my son grew up with this boy, and my son was traumatized. He grew up with this kid. He was devastated, and some of the kids that my son knows were devastated. It was a terrible thing. So then it kind of hit back again that I knew somebody else, that this could have happened to me. This could have been my house, and we had cops, and we had the ambulance, and it's devastating. And I think there's been a few more. I knew another family recently that they didn't know their daughter was doing drugs. That traumatized. She did not live. They were trying to give her CPR. Everybody thinks it's just something that they're learning in school. They're doing it in school. Well, we were doing drugs in school too. We may not have been doing this one where people are dying so much because it's laced with fentanyl or whatever else they're putting in it, where they get it from. Or it's hard for me to hear people judge.
Can you leave us with one final piece of advice or thought that you would have for parents or anybody who has family members or friends that are struggling with addiction? What would you tell them to do? How can they hold on?
They just need to make sure they have a good support system. Read books. There's lots of books out there for parents. There's lots of Facebook pages. Those are really good. I have some heroin support. I'm even on a heroin support page, and I watch how the people talk on there. It's devastating. So just go out there and learn about it if you are dealing with it, because there's power in knowledge.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being open and brave enough to share this.
Yeah, this was tough.
We're proud of you.
Thanks.
We love you.
Thank you. Yes. We love you too.
Follow Instagram. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook.